The goal of your presentation, or any presentation that you do, is to get your message across. You want to identify your topic, you want to identify what your argument is, and then you want to persuade your audience to see your point of view on this, or to believe in the data that you're presenting or the point of view that you're presenting. You want to keep your audience interested in what you're doing and what you're saying. And hopefully that will stimulate some more additional creative thinking on your part, as well as that of your audience. So let's talk about some ways that we can make our presentations more effective. Use simple backgrounds. Use simple and clean fonts. Make sure the words are readable against the background. Keep the text to a minimum. Avoid bullet points. A picture's worth 1,000 words. Make sure there's a clear focal point on each slide. Limit the number of slides. And whatever you do, don't fill your slide with words and then stand there and read them to us. Now, normally when I do this in the classroom, I actually stand with my back to the class and I read these really fast and comically. But it gets the point across. And I still see a lot of people doing presentations like this. Research shows us that people can't attend to the words on the slide and listen to what you're saying at the same time. So the visual often takes precedence with most people, and they're going to sit there reading what's on the slide and stop listening to you. And you don't want them to do that. You want them to be focused on what you're saying. So slides need to be visual, yet and explain what they need to explain and help the listener understand what you're saying, but they can't become a crutch for you. So let's start off and look at this set of rules again. First of all, solid is good. It's readable. So don't be afraid of a solid background, especially when you're projecting. The more busy those backgrounds get, and depending on the equipment that you're using, the harder and harder they become to read, and the colors don't look like you think they're going to look. But you know, Keynote and presentation and PowerPoint both offer you tons of options. I'm just going to swap over to that and show you. So in Keynote, when we want to create a new presentation, such beautiful choices. But some of them get just way too busy for most projection screens and for most readers who are looking at them. PowerPoint works the same way. Lots of beautiful choices. So remember, solid is good. And then you can choose simple colors against which that make more contrast. And that keeps things very, very readable. You also want to avoid all those bullet points. The default, again, in PowerPoint and Keynote, default slide half the time is the bullet list. And you know, when we're organizing our presentation, we do tend to think in terms of bullet points. But it starts to become a crutch again. You put too many words on the screen. So just avoid the bullet points if you can. You can make use fewer words and make a much cleaner statement. Also make sure that every slide has a clear focal point, and that's what's wrong with bullet points is you're scanning from top to bottom and there's no real clear focus on the screen, even when the title is up across the top. But you can see in this slide, I've got this triangle and it draws the eye right to the center, and you see my message. Solid is good. Solid is readable. Don't be afraid of solid. And that triangle helps draw us into the center and see that message. Another thing to keep in mind is a clean font is a readable font. The one that I used on the very first slide has all those squigglies, and it's very adorable, but it gets hard to read, especially when there's not enough contrast. So here I've used two different clean fonts. Now I've mixed them, and the reason I have is because I want you to see, I want your eye to be drawn to clean and readable. And so I'm making my point without a lot of words, but using using the technology that's there, the choices that are there, in a way that helps make that point. And again, we have a clear focal point in the middle of the slide. You're drawn right in, clean and readable or bigger, and again, you're drawn right to them. So, clean fonts. And again, keep that text to a minimum. You know, a picture's worth 1,000 words, but sometimes people start to fill up their slides with so many pictures and the words, and it gets a little bit busy. And in case when you're looking at this, if you can't tell, those are coconuts. That's another thing I should warn you of, is sometimes photographs don't look that well when they're projected, as they look as well as they did on your phone or on your camera. So keep that in mind. But a picture really can do a lot of work for you when you're doing a presentation. Whatever you do, make sure that the words, if you're going to put words against it, make sure that they're readable. So what I've had to do here is put a rectangle behind the words so that they stand out against the picture, because if I didn't, those words would just bleed right into the coconuts. Also, limit the number of slides that you use. Sometimes people for a 10-minute presentation, will end up with 20 slides, but the average, my experience is that most people average about 2 minutes per slide. So when they come in with 20 slides, they're looking at a 40-minute presentation, not a 10-minute presentation. And it gets tedious and you get lost a little bit if you have too many slides. So figure that you're going to spend an average of 2 minutes per slide. And try to cut down even from there if you can. Be very, very judicious. So again, whatever you do, don't fill up your slides with words and stand there and read them to us. We can read. We don't actually need you to do it for us. So a couple of last little things. Make sure that in your presentation that your topic is clear, that you clearly articulate it to us, that we understand what your thesis or argument is, and then persuade us with the evidence. You don't have to persuade us with all of it because you only have 10 minutes. For many of you, especially if this is your first presentation, I recommend that you write out a script. In the academic societies that I belong to, nearly everyone writes out their paper and reads it to their audience, and that's perfectly acceptable. Time yourself. You only have 10 minutes. In many panels that you might participate in, they might give you a 20-minute limit or a 30-minute limit, and they have to cut you off at the end because other people have to go, rooms have to be changed over for the next panel. So it's incredibly rude to go over your time limit. So time yourself. If you're going to embed audio or video in your PowerPoint or Keynote, make sure that it's actually embedded and not linked. Now, I think that PowerPoint does it by default, but Keynote, you want to make sure you go to Preferences and make sure that it says Copy Audio and Movies into Document. If in doubt, whatever files that you embedded, make sure you copy those with you and take them with you. And this is really important if you're using it on a different computer from your own, where you designed and created the presentation. So that's it. I'm looking forward to hearing and seeing your presentations this week.